Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete from Anxiety here. Welcome into today's episode. I appreciate y'all being here so much. Let's talk about a few things real quick. The Pete vs. Anxiety Team Anxiety Facebook group. Are you a part of it? You're not? What are you waiting for? The link's down here in the description down below, or go to Facebook and search Pete vs. Anxiety. Then look for the Team Anxiety team page and join it today. Why not? You can join and help. It'll be great. Yeah, like right now. Hurry up. Stop what you're doing. Pause this video. Go do it right now. But anyways, let's also talk about the Pete vs. Anxiety YouTube page. If you're here right now, you're probably following it most likely. If not, head on over there, subscribe, be sure to like and comment on the videos and let me know, because all that stuff really helps, guys. I really appreciate it. And help me break the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. But anyways, guys, let's get into today's episode. I'll have a great one. Thank you so much again. And as I always say, don't ask how your day is, ask how your mental health is today. Guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Pete for Anxiety here on the Oracle Talk Radio Network. My guest today is a licensed professional clinical counselor supervisor, speaker, author, and leading expert in the clinical application of the polybag theory. She is also the founder and steward and lead curator of the Rooted Compassion Counseling, the one, the only, Amy Sullivan. How are you doing today, Amy?
Good. How are you, Pete?
Good. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself? I mean, that's a lot. You're a speaker, you're an author, you're
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm a counselor. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I own a practice with 9 other therapists. And prior to becoming a therapist, I actually was a licensed massage therapist for 20 years. And it was there that I met the polybag theory. So we can talk in a little bit about what that is, but it really changed the direction of my life. It had a huge impact on me personally and was pretty important in my change to becoming a mental health therapist. All of our work is centered on the polybag theory. So it's a theory that was created by Stephen Porges over the course of about the last 50 years. And there is a social worker named Deb Dana who really translated his work into use for therapy. And I'm on her senior training team. So we do trainings all over the world on this theory and why it's important for mental health. And I've written some things, including a chapter in a book about the topic. And then I'm currently co-authoring a book we're in the process of writing on how do we use the polybag theory in counseling for children.
That's awesome.
Yeah, keep him busy.
Clearly I can tell. So from massage therapist to therapist is a very interesting jump. What made you, though? I mean, like, I've always been fascinated by psychology ever since I even knew it existed. I've always been wondering how the mind works. And then you hear all these like stories. And then I took a course in college, and it was one of my requisitions I had to take. And I watched this video on these like serial killer guys, and watching how they're responding to the things that they've done. They're not having no emotion. And you're just sitting there wondering, dude, what is this going on in these guys' heads? So, but that's a massive change, though.
Not really, because of the kind of mental health therapy we provide. It's very body-mind connection oriented. So one of the things the polybag theory teaches us is that our mental health really starts in our body.
Yeah.
So to explain this, I typically ask people, how do you know when you're afraid? So I'll ask you that, Pete. How do you know when you're afraid?
It's like that sense of feeling, like you get your pulse starts racing and things like that. Basically, your body's telling you that something's wrong.
Yes. So same thing with anger, same thing with happiness, with sadness. Any emotion that we have starts by sensations in the body. And so our work is, if we can pay attention, and by the way, it's navigated or really navigated by the nervous system. So when we can help people pay attention to those sensations that the nervous system is providing about if they feel emotionally safe or not in the world, that's for us where real change starts to happen for people. To me, it's like getting really to the core of what our mental health is, what's happening, because very often what happens is we have a sensation, we really don't know what it is or how to make sense of it. And because as humans, we're meaning-making beings, we create a story about the sensations we're feeling. So, oh, I'm not good enough. Or typically it goes, there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with everybody else. And I talk to my clients about, if you find yourself in that story, that's just a story. And, 99% of the time, neither one of those is right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's back up from the story. Let's go back up and look at what happened to make us uncomfortable, and how do we deal with it on that level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Though, I mean, it sounds like it's an interesting theory because I've never heard about it until now, and I'm just like,
Mm.
oh my god, tell me more. Like, what is this? And what was it about it that attracted you though? Because you said you were working as a massage therapist, and then someone
Yes.
introduced you to it, basically.
Yeah, so as a massage therapist, I started learning how to teach infant massage to
Oh,
parents
okay.
and caregivers. And that program, which is called Baby's First Massage, and it's still in existence, and they do trainings all over. They use the polyvagal theory as the science behind attachment. Because what the polyvagal theory really tells us is, how do we feel emotionally safe in the world as we connect to other people, as we connect to ourselves, and how we feel about the environment we're in. And it happens at the brainstem level, which means we're having unconscious, we use the word neuroception, unconscious nervous system reading and creating responses in our body to really the simple question of, do we feel emotionally safe or not? When we don't feel emotionally safe, there's a whole patterning of behaviors and feelings that we can slip into. And for people who have had chronic stress, attachment wounds, traumas, if those things don't get processed and managed, it sits there and continues to create anxiety, create trauma responses, depression, even when the life circumstances seem fine.
Yeah, I can actually say that I can agree that's true because for me, I had a lot of trauma I'm still dealing with. In this current
Mhm.
situation is nothing like it, but I still have that sense of anxiety feeling, of just whatever it is, it just keeps kicking back in. But it's
Yeah.
not like that now.
Yeah.
My life now is great. I have a wife who understands things. She understands a lot of things on her end. She knows I've been through things, and a lot of it showed up early on in the dating when we start dating, though. Like, the sense of trust. Like, I had no reason not to trust her. She's never given me a reason, but my ex had cheated on me. So that trust was really hard for me to give to someone,
Yes.
and then the fact that we lived so far apart, we were like 2.5 hours away, given like 150 miles away from each other when we first started talking. And like the way she responded is what reassured me that this is okay, because in my head, I'm freaking out. She knows I'm freaking out, but she is so mellow about the way she was handling it. It was just like, it reassured me, like, okay, well, I understand, this person's not doing these things, and we had an incident basically happen, and something that triggered in such the way she handled it was just professionally, just really casual. Wasn't really get upset with me, didn't get mad at me for getting upset about it,
Yeah.
completely understood. And it reassured me, though, that, hey, okay, this person's not lying to me. I have no reason not to trust this person, even though that self-doubt is there because,
Right.
the 15 years of trauma I dealt with my ex being, very narcissistic and all the kind of stuff she used to do to me and things like that. It just messed with my head. It's totally different now, but it comes back, and that's what got me into therapy eventually, was just like, I just had enough. I was tired of being a slave to this thing of whatever this thought process was and the thoughts that go through my head. And now I'm better equipped ever since doing the show. I've learned more things from new people all the time. I do therapy, and stuff like that. So I'm learning new techniques all the time and how to counteract it. So like, my head starts trying to start creating thoughts. I just start picking it apart. Like, yeah, this is kind of, yeah, that's not what that is, and I just keep kind of canceling out the things where I'm trying to make, my brain is trying to invent it and my anxiety is trying to say, oh no, this is what's going on. Here's what to start freaking out, And the worst one and the funny one for a lot of people is that text messages for me were so hard to understand at first. Like when you text somebody, I would think, it had to be an instant response. So I had to teach myself, hey, listen, Pete, listen, when you send this message, this person is either not going to respond right away or they might. So don't panic, because this is not an immediate thing. If you needed to talk to them about something immediate, you need to call them on the phone and get a direct answer. If not, you're sending this message like you would put a Facebook post out there, and just somebody eventually responds or they see it, kind of thing, it always at first it seems silly to me, but now it seems silly now because it's just like, geez, dude, it's like it's a text message. Like they've been around for so long. It's not like this is something new. You have, Facebook all the way down to TikTok, different ways to message people,
But it's not even the text message, right? You said it. It's the connection you're looking for. So what you just described to me is when you met your wife and the way she held your emotions and what was going on for you allowed you to create a deep connection with her. Mm-hmm. When we can create those deep, Dr. Porges refers to it as social engagement. When we can create relationships that they don't have to all be the deepest thing.
Yeah.
But typically when we find a relationship where we really feel like we can settle in, it can be romantic marriage, it can be friendship, family relationships. It allows our nervous system to ease and settle a little bit. And then what can happen is you described this perfectly, right? So when we're stressed, tense, dealing with trauma, our thinking brain goes offline. And it's why we can't really access logical solutions all the time.
Right.
And so when we have connection, our thinking brain comes back online, and then you're able to say things like, hey, Pete, you're really looking for connection. So if you don't want to wait by sending the text, call. And I can't tell you how much our voice, our tone of voice especially, plays into our feeling of being safe or unsafe with another. So I always give the example of my kids. They're in their 20s now, but growing up, they would say, like, you're yelling at me. And I would say, like, my volume didn't rise. But what I learned with the polyvagal theory is it was my tone of voice. Mm-hmm. So they perceived it as yelling. And so then I was like, oh, that tone of voice that gets really firm, sometimes can feel threatening to them.
Yeah.
And so now we call it toning in our house. You're toning at me, right? But it's, so I love the example you gave of, I can text and I can wait for a text, and probably a text from your wife you would receive as warm and connecting.
Yeah.
But sometimes we're texting with people and the written word can be hard because we don't always know the intention behind it.
Yeah.
And if we're still dealing with unprocessed stress or trauma, very typically our interpretation of that written word goes through the filter of us not feeling safe. And then we can misinterpret and that kind of thing. So
no, I agree with you on that 100%, because I've had that moment too. Like I get these weird messages and I just look at them like, what does this mean? Like you're sitting there having this inner conflict and they can't see the other side of the screen. You're freaking out going, what the hell is this for me? What? Yeah. Because my dad's like that too. He's not a big texter. He's like, just call me. He's like, I don't have time to read these texts. Like, unless it's something like you don't really need them right away kind of thing. Just like send him a quick message. Hey, listen, you got a second, call me or whatever. That kind of thing like that. He's very generic when it comes to that. When you call and talk to him, he's more of the on the phone guy because of that reason too. And I got that same problem with my tone of voice. Like I am originally from Chicago when I come down here, so I'm louder than most people in Texas a lot of times. So a lot of people take it as, oh, you're being, rude. I'm like, no, it's not even that. I'm not even yelling at you. You want to be yelled at? I could show you what it's yelling like. You know what I mean? That's all I used to tell people all the time, because it's just that, the tone of voice, the way your tone comes off. And it's something I work on all the time, is because it's the way you say things, or the tone that you use when you say it. And it's just, it's hard sometimes because I'm very blunt when it comes to things for a lot of people. And a lot of people are just not ready for it. But after they get used to it, they're just like, oh, that's just Peter. That's how he does. And that's how he talks. And, all those other things. And it's so much, it makes so much sense though.
Time with you. They need those interactions with you to know that your tone of voice is maybe more cultural in terms of where you grew up, more of a city guy, kind of thing, to understand that that's cultural more so than having the meaning behind it of being aggressive or whatever. I think that's exactly the best way to explain it though, because, or what is the other thing too, is that I'm down here and I don't say good morning to people. I say hello or something. And it was a whole funny conversation even that broke out. Even this guy and I came in, because I work in customer service right now as my job full time. So I deal with people on a daily basis. So this one guy came in and said, I know you're not from Texas. I'm thinking, I know I'm not from Texas. So you're right. He goes, you know why? Because you don't say good morning to people. I'm like,
I acknowledge you came in the room and kind of thing. You know, my boss is like laughing because she goes, yeah, that's because you don't have Southern hospitality, honey. That's what it is. And I just start laughing like, I acknowledge them. I said, hello, I greet you. You come in. I make sure I know you're in the store. I'm polite to you all the way, but just because I didn't say good morning to you, you're mad because I'm not, good morning to you. It's just not what I do, you know? And my mom was the same way too. In high school, she used to mess with me. She used to go, good morning, and just keep saying it until I respond because I'm half asleep. And I'm like, it's something I'm not used to. I just don't do that. You know, it's not that I'm not pleasant to be there. It's just, I'm just not a good morning person to people. Right. I'm like, it's something I learned how to do because certain people like it. So I try to appease to them a little bit so I don't have to listen to the good morning 20,000 times until I respond with the same thing.
Right.
So, but it's always interesting though, too, because I think tone of voice is very big because that's how you can tell when something's wrong with a lot of people too. Sometimes they say things and that's a quick identifier for me. Like, okay, well, something's up, or somebody's upset. You can tell based on the sound of their voice, or like if it makes like a cracking noise, kind of like all these different things that don't seem a lot to other people that I tend to pick up on really quick because I'm really good at reading a lot of situations with people.
Yeah,
so like
we develop those skills when we live through trauma and when we live through chronic stress. And Dr. Porges says the tone of voice is the tattletale of our emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can, just like you said, I remember talking to a colleague once and her giving me really bad news. And I wanted to cry, but I didn't want to cry in front of her. And so I found myself going, no, it's okay. It's fine. I'll talk to you later. Okay. Like my voice went really high in efforts to try to avoid like really being in my body. Yeah. Because what my body wanted to do was just express the sadness and the disappointment I was feeling. And so noticing that even in the therapy room, when I try to be as human as possible. And so we might come in and have a little joke or a little greeting, hello. And then when stuff starts to get more serious, I know my voice goes to, oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened or how did you deal with that? And I have clients who will come in and say, I got something to talk about and I don't need your super sweet voice today, because they know, they can feel that like gentler voice invites more vulnerability.
Yeah.
And what I love about them being able to say that is they know exactly what they need, right? They need me to hold a little toughness around it until they're ready to go really into the deeper part of it. And so that's the part of this dance of sort of following along the client, but also knowing when to challenge or when to push a little bit. There's that dance as a therapist that we watch.
I think tone goes really well with kids too, if you think about it, because if you notice as you raise it and lower it, they kind of know whether to be on edge. Yep. They'll know they're in trouble based on what you're saying. You don't have to yell, honestly. Most kids, I know with my 4-year-old that went through marriage, my wife's daughter, she reacts different than my kids did. My kids didn't do the same thing. Like her, it's like you get a little too high in tone of voice, it'll startle her, but then she'll know that, either she knows by now that I'm just a loud person sometimes, and it just happens. So it doesn't really freak out as much. At first it did. She's very sensitive to tone. Yeah. But you can tell she responds based on what tone you're giving. So you got to be careful. When you call her name real loud, she thinks she's in trouble, she'll run. And you gotta kind of be calm and talk real low to her, just be real gentle with her, because I've been learning, the kids that are 4 notice a lot of stuff like that. So if me and my wife start having a disagreement or something, or sounds like it, she'll get up and start telling us to calm down. Everybody calm down. I'm like, listen, and we stop and tell her like, hey, listen, it's not that, we're just talking. That's all it is. Yeah. But it's so fascinating to see that this little girl at 4 years old is picking up on these things already, and it's so
for sure. So the nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system is fully developed by 32 weeks in utero.
Okay.
So the baby is already starting to feel these nervous system responses. What kids don't have is the cognitive framework to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And so I would say kids are uniquely positioned to really be taught through the lens of the polyvagal theory because they live in their body. They don't have that intellectual process that, interrupting. They're just, they can feel their feelings. They get afraid of something. And actually I say this too, we experience our feelings in our body, and it's typically our caregivers that then give a name to that feeling.
Yeah.
So they see an animal and they come running to you and you go, oh, you're just afraid. And then they go, oh, clock it. This internal body sensation means afraid.
Yeah.
And then on they go with their life. But you're right. And some of the, so I learned this theory when my kids were little, and it really probably impacted my parenting more than anything else, and was really the drive to learn more and more about polyvagal theory. But being able to apply those different theories, looking at tone of voice, looking at eye contact with my kids, looking at body positions, were they curled in or were they able to kind of come this way, and just being able to read and even babies do it. They give cues of eye contact or not. They can splay their hands. It makes me laugh because we used to say, talk to the hand, like 10 years ago, babies do that. They will put up a hand when they need a break. Their bodies tense and move in that same cadence. And so looking at that and then realizing for me, and I have my fair share of trauma and stress in my life, looking at how I would avoid eye contact with certain people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is polyvagal. Like, I'm not feeling safe. And so then it challenged me like, okay, you're a competent adult. What do you need to do, Amy, to develop a sense of safety to be able to live more freely in the world so that I'm not bound up in all of my stories that I'm creating by these different body sensations? So it feels to me, and what I'm really passionate about is helping people understand that your mental health doesn't start in your brain. Nope. It actually starts in your body. Mm-hmm. And so how do we recognize those messages from our nervous system about how we're feeling, if we're feeling safe or unsafe emotionally in the world and the people in it? And then we really go into breaking it down, so we do a lot of mapping. I use a mapping system that I created where we can really look at relationships. Yeah. And I might say to you, who's your safest relationship? And you would say, my wife. And okay, she's in that category. And I would say, wait a minute, because your wife is going to do things and you're going to do things every day that help us feel less connected than at other times. So we're always living on this continuum of how we feel emotionally safe or unsafe. And when we can really recognize the cues that our body gives us and know what to do with those cues, it frees us up from the stories we create and even from being held hostage with some of the emotions.
I call it emotional terrorism, but same thing basically. And to go back to the point about with eye contact with kids, with her, it's like I make sure she's looking at me when I ask her to do something. I look her straight in the eyes and I'll ask her directly what to do, and I'll point to what I'm talking about. Yes. And I find that a lot of times she responds really well. She understands. It's if you treat her like a person, not like just hey, yell at her, hey, go, no, just say hey, listen, Allie, come look at me. I said, listen, look at, and I'm like, listen, and she look at you, nod, like she's looking at you. Hey, can you go pick that up for me? And then I'll point to what it is. She'll look over at it, what it is too. And she tends to respond right away. And it was so interesting because versus my kids was different. I yelled and screamed at my kids, all the things I shouldn't have done that I learned, through, because, I was young. I didn't know better. We have kids at early age these days, you don't know better these things, and I wish I knew a lot of things I knew now that I could use with them, like I use with her, because it's different. Her, it's like, I don't yell. If I feel like I'm going to yell, walk away into another room, I'll try and get away, or I'll apologize, like, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to get you upset or whatever. Because she understands, like, I know she understands based on the things I've learned from doing this show and the people I've met, people have taught me things that she understands a lot more. So I treat her like she knows a lot more, and it's great. And she's almost 5 now, and her and I, we cook together. She can cook her own eggs and everything herself. I'm teaching her new things as we go to see what else she can handle. Hey, this is hot, that's cold, don't touch this. And she's really good when you say, hey, please don't touch it. Is that what you're supposed to touch that? And things like that. And she responds really well with it too. And it's really, it's interesting to see the different approach I'm taking now. Because if you would have told my kids that's what I'm doing, they'll be like, oh no, Dad, that's not what you did with us. You yelled at us and this and that.
Yeah. And a big part of, we're writing this book about how do we use polyvagal theory in counseling with kids a parent could pick it up and read it and learn, really good stuff too. In fact, we'll have sections for how do we apply this as a family? How do the parents start to recognize their own systems? And while the skills are kind of directed towards counselors, there's no reason parents can't use some of the techniques. But I like what's happening here, because you and I are talking right now about our own responses to stress, or, whatever, we need something done and we're going to ask somebody to do it or instruct somebody to do it, and what our nervous system is doing and how our tone of voice changes. But that also happens with the people we're interacting with. And when it happens with kids, one of our messages is, again, they don't necessarily have the cognitive ability to understand that, even though their body knows. But what we all need as a beginning point for developing felt emotional safety is positive connection with another. Mm-hmm. And so, what I would say, if you were going to tell me a story about her coming to you unregulated or upset or, throwing a tantrum or whatever, our message always is find a way to connect before we do any corrective action, right? So as long as everybody is physically safe, right? We want to take corrective action if we're not in a safe environment physically. Once we're physically safe, before we correct, before we discipline, before we discuss why we shouldn't do that or we should do that, we need to come to a connecting point. So that might look like, oh gosh, I can see you're having really big feelings. Or it might be, hey, why don't we go for a walk for a little bit before we talk about this? Or do you want me to scratch your back for a little bit before we talk about this? That connection, a way to connect that brings our nervous systems to a more regulated place, so that we can then discuss or look at what the situation is, but we can also both respond from the place in our brain where both our logic and our emotions are regulated. Because if we're too much in the logic or too much in the emotions, we're not really experiencing our life in the best way possible. And we can bring those two parts of ourselves, of our brain and of ourselves together when we have that sense of felt safety, which comes from good social connection.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think that, with her, I'm learning the things I'm learning now, I'm applying to her, and it's different because she's not my own flesh and blood, which to a lot of people, that makes a difference. To me, it doesn't. I've always been accepting everybody, but that also comes from the fact I was abandoned when I was 10. Mm-hmm. So, I learned that too early on when I talked to a gentleman named Dr. Tim. He had told me, he said, why that is? He's like, and he started pinpointing these things about me, and it was just weird. I was like, Dr. Tim, I feel like you're calling me out right now, man. Hold on a second here, okay? But he was picking these things out, and I learned very early on that you can learn these things and start to see these things ahead of time. And he's like, yeah, did you know that? Do you do these kind of things? You make sure people feel included in things? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you know why that is? He goes, it's because were you abandoned as a kid? Didn't even know this and started asking these questions. I was like, whoa, I feel a little called out here, man. Stop. But, the thing with kids, though, is I've met a few people now that's what their focus is. One guy, he has a book called Just Breathe. And Leroy, he's in Canada. He's a principal of a school, and he was telling me that he applies it there in his own school. These kids, young as 4 and 5, he's teaching them to just take a deep breath and think about the next thing you do. And I think we as adults should do the same thing. It's just, hey, just take a deep breath, think about what you're going to say next, because whatever you say next could turn the conversation good or bad, And I feel like people's emotions get too much in it sometimes. You get hyped up and you start going start getting mad. Everybody starts yelling and speaking. So now, normally I used to engage in arguments, but now it's these people that come in and start yelling at me, I'm just sitting there in my head thinking, what's my next plan is that to make? Because I'm just thinking, ooh, this is so funny. And in my head, I'm thinking, ooh, you're getting real mad about this. Okay, so you're real, okay. And I'm just I'm saying as completely calm as possible, because I already know this is if I fuel this fire more, this is going to get out of hand real quick. And, I'm taking the high road versus, Pete 20 years ago. Oh, no, I've been let's pour the gasoline, baby. Let's start that sucker up. But it's so interesting, though, that you guys are working towards children. Do you have a suggested age you should start working with them at these kind of things? Can you start as early as 4? Or you said it.
The whole piece of doing infant massage around connection is totally supported by polyvagal theory.
Oh, okay.
So as soon as the kid's born, you can start they don't have language. So the way they communicate is with their body and with their tone. And typically we say they cry or they don't cry, but the reality is they tone all the time.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the different kinds of cries, it also tells you. So some like, can really just be their effort at telling a story about something that happened. And so to respond to them like, yeah, what happened next? And tell me everything. And it's almost like you're having a conversation where they're feeling heard and you don't even need words. There's a beautiful clip on YouTube of a man and his son, and they're sitting on the TV watching TV, or sitting on the couch watching TV, and somebody's videotaping them, and the child can sit up and interact, but doesn't yet have language. And so you see the child kind of pointing at the TV and talking to the dad, and the dad's like, yeah, can you believe that? And then they did this, and what else? And so the kid's responding, but without language. And it's so joyful, and it's funny. And it's just one of the most beautiful examples I've ever seen of this building felt safety and communication without words. And so we have to think about that with kids, not only even if they have language, knowing that they don't have the cognitive structure for everything we do. And so responding in ways that they can receive. But attachment starts even in utero. Right.
Yeah.
And everything I'm describing is really about building attachment between the baby and whoever is interacting with them. The other thing I wanted to point out, talking about breath work is, so the polyvagal theory is built on Stephen Porges's discoveries that the vagus nerve in most animals, like not mammals, but sort of the different classifications of animals, have one branch of the vagus nerve, and it serves to protect. It serves to move us into our defense strategies when we're feeling threatened, when we're feeling physically threatened. Put mammals on board, mammals have a bigger brain. And when you look at any species of mammals, they need each other to survive. So, and that's why you hear, terms like a gaggle or a posse, or, a pack, these different classifications for groups. It's because all mammals need each other. And so that vagus nerve in mammals has a second branch. So that's where we get the poly, meaning more than one, a second branch that facilitates our social interaction with each other. So while the original branch basically does defense mechanisms, the second branch leaves the brainstem, the vagus nerve does, and serves our muscles of facial expression, our tone of voice, how we hear, right? So we can give our emotional state through our tone of voice, but what we hear from another's tone is going to impact how we feel safe or not. Yeah. And the other part of that second branch goes to manage heart rate variability. And what's interesting about breathing is that breathing is the number one way to impact heart rate variability, and it is through the vagus nerve that happens. And so when we can do that breathing where our exhale is extended, it brings the heart rate down, and big emotions can't live in the body when our heart rate's lowered. So anxiety, for existence.
100%.
It feeds on the heart rate speeding. And so when we can use breathing or anything to slow our heart rate, but breathing is certainly the number one way to do that, they're like oil and water, right? They can't live together. So,
yeah, that's true. I could contest to that completely, though, because when my anxiety gets high, my heart rate starts racing, and I know when I'm about to have like a panic attack moment, and I've had very few, but I know when it's coming. It's that feeling you don't forget, and it's almost like simulating having a heart attack. Almost, you just can't breathe. You get your pulse is racing, and that's the first thing you're trying to do is take control. You're trying to just breathe and get your breath back in control, because if not, you're going ready for a spiral ride, and people that don't understand those things, it makes me laugh because they're like, oh, well, just relax or just calm down. I'm just like,
or even just breathe.
Yeah, too.
When you get to the point you're describing, which to me is kind of one end of the continuum, it can be hard to find our breath.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is, can you recognize those signs of anxiety before they get to that extreme end of the spectrum? Because I always say feelings are like toddlers, so you might feel a little discontent and your body's giving you some messages, but generally we all ignore those. And then it gets a little more intense and a little more intense. You almost always have signs before you get to panic attack.
Yeah.
And if we can watch those signs, but I say it's like having a toddler, because when a toddler wants your attention, they'll be like, Mom, Mommy, right? And our body sensations that are communicating something to us do the same thing. They come in slow, and as we ignore them, they get louder and louder.
That's right. Because, usually it starts for me is that the thought will start going in my head and it'll start to swirling. And then usually something adds onto it.
What happened before the thought? Because the thought is the story that was developed from some sensation.
Yeah, exactly.
Not feeling safe. So by the time you notice the thoughts, or at least for me, by the time I notice the thoughts, I'm going, wait a minute, back up.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Story and come back here.
That's exactly what I do now. I talk myself off that ledge. Like I said, that's why I start like dissecting it a little bit. Like, oh, hold on, we got this thought going. Let's process this thought really quick before we start overreacting. Yes. And then it's like, if you're stressed out, then it's like, oh, well, now you got this added on. Now it's multiplying that one now because the stress is adding on to it, but you're still trying to fight it. Like, hey, listen, and it's a constant battle in your head. People don't know it, and some people that can recognize it can see it sometimes where I'm in deep thought in my own mind. I'm just kind of walking around on autopilot in deep thought or thinking about something like, oh, you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Because you don't want to include the people in it because a lot of people don't understand what's going on, and it's right. It's funny to me because it's like a lot of people want to give you advice, but half of them have no idea what they're even talking about 90% of the time. It's like, it's great, and I'll use an example. Like I got robbed at gunpoint one time when I was living in Houston, and then everybody afterwards wanted to tell me what I should have done. I'm like, yeah, see, when you're in that situation and you're dealing with it,
logic brain goes offline, and working from that safety perspective, and your body will do whatever it needs to do
exactly
to experience safety. And none of us know what we're going to do if and when we get in that situation.
Luckily it turned out really okay in situation wise. Nobody got hurt, which is the most important thing. But it was like in that moment, it happened like slow motion as it started happening. Like I didn't realize it at first, and it was just like a real slow motion at first, and then all of a sudden it just kicked back on. All of a sudden, full speed, and then everything just happened so fast. And then when it left, I was like so hyped on adrenaline just because everything going on, and then I just started shaking emotionally because I didn't know what to do at that point. So I was like, "Oh shit! I just survived having 2 guns put on me, and I'm still alive here." Like, oh god, like you start having that, like remorse, like, oh shit, should I have made it through this kind of thing, and it was just like, had to talk yourself off the ledge from there because it was just horrible, and then when I went back after the whole situation, I was paranoid for a few days because, I was in the same place. I was always constantly looking where it was because where the setup was, there's a back door, and we always kept telling them, hey, we shouldn't leave that door open at night because you never know who's going to come out because the area we were in was kind of rough, so So I was constantly staring at that door every so often. It didn't matter what time of day it was. I was just over there looking at it every so often in a paranoid state, And now I've used it as a teaching tool for people. Like, hey, listen, you always want to be aware of your surroundings when you're here, man. We're here in the middle of the night. There's a lot of things going on here. Make sure you're paying attention. Any weird cars, the different things you run through the scenarios I know now. But everybody wanted to tell me, oh, this is what I did. You should have done this. You should have done that. I'm like, you should have been there instead and tell me how it goes for you. Try that. Be a hero.
Right.
You want to be a superhero? Hey, listen, Batman's not real, but you're about to find out. Here we go. It's like great for everybody telling me what to do in this situation. I'm like, when you live through this situation, it's a whole nother ball game, Like it's a one-in-a-lifetime experience, like not something I want to ever do. So now I'm like extra harder when it comes to those kind of things. Now when I'm teaching people, I'm like, listen, I just want y'all to know, because I'm like the old guy teaching the young guys everything, like the Karate Kid type deal. I'm teaching these guys new things. Like, listen, I may sound like I'm bantering to you, but let me tell you some facts here. Facts are these, and then you just lay it out for them. Like, I'm just looking out for your safety at the end of the day, because I know what it's like. I've been there. I don't know if you'll come back from it the same way I did. And we've had situations before, it's just the line of work I do anyways, it's just, you get into that scenario, the possibility. So I'm like, the idea is that you want to give them less chances that they'll be here for that no reason. You don't want to give anybody a reason to do something. So don't do these things, they're just like these little steps and things I have for them. Like, hey, listen, just these are why I'm so hard on these things. So, it's like teaching a kid, different kind of things. So you're teaching them the same way. And it's like, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to get in your case, but at the same time, I'm trying to understand that you don't want to go through this experience. I've lived it for us both. You don't want to be in this situation. Trust me. There's people I know that don't come back from these situations. We had a young lady, one situation where I got our hand, but they ended up having to shoot the guy because he wouldn't let go of the girl. He had her by the throat or whatever. Never saw that girl again. I don't even know if she even made it that long. She had a rough time afterwards. And, it's like, these are the things that you don't want to experience, and then people are like, oh, no, we'll be fine. Okay, well, you say that, but when you get in that mode.
Sometimes even all the preparation, we're still experiencing things that are hard. And, my hope is that people understand that's what you can take to therapy. And we use the polyvagal theory as kind of the grounding of any modality we use in therapy. And then building on that, we might use EMDR, which would be a great solution for the situations you just described, or somatic experiencing, or EFT, all the different modalities. But for us, understanding those ideas around mental health starting in the body is the groundwork.
Yeah.
How do we recognize what's happening in our nervous system? How do we support our nervous system for good mental health? And then let's move from there.
Yeah, Amy, let me ask you though, why is it that until now I've never heard of the polyvagal? Do you think it's just because a lot of people know what the term is, but just don't use that term? Or is it
I'm actually surprised you haven't heard it, given that you've been doing this podcast for a while. It definitely is a newer theory. And so to make the distinction, it's not a modality like EMDR or CBT or modalities. It's really a theory, and it is newer. So his original work was published in the early 90s, but it wasn't until I think it was 2017 or 18 when Deb Dana's book came out using the polyvagal theory in counseling that it really hit the therapy world. And I had been trying. So Dr. Porges is a beautiful, lovely man who is so smart that when you listen to him talk, you have to have a dictionary or something nearby, right? So I've been following him and kind of translating this, and I was using the polyvagal theory in how I would teach infant massage, right? That was the basis of that. But I really knew there was information here to help adults in this way. And perhaps that's the biggest driving factor, kind of coming back around to moving from massage therapy to mental health therapy, had a lot to do with that. And so that came forward, and definitely in the field of counseling, it's catching like wildfire. But even if you look at anybody who's really focusing on trauma recovery, so yoga and, holistic practitioners. And I even met with a chiropractor last week who wanted to kind of collaborate in the way that, we can look at chiropractic as it makes your back feel better, but the reality is you're trying to create a clear pathway for the spinal cord and nervous system so that the body functions well. Because if one of those nerve, the nervous system, what am I looking for? Not the neurons, but like the pathway out of the spinal cord, if that's twisted or impinged and somehow those sensations are not moving through the body in the way we need them to. Right. So looking at the nervous system a little bit differently in terms of overall health, but looking at it in terms of our mental health, it is definitely. And I know my feed's going to read different than yours, right? Because I'm in it. But yoga practitioners will say, oh, we're going to do this class to calm the nervous system, or things like that. So, and maybe you've seen it and just ignored it because you didn't know what it was. But it's definitely, in my world, kind of catching and taking store all over the world. We're working on a training to do with counselors in Turkey right now. So it's
that's so cool though.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Turkey too. That's really cool to see that you're getting out that far too, because you could learn different things from them. And I know Eastern medicine is always interesting, especially when you go to the holistic side of things. I've had a lot of holistic healers on here that have always fascinated me, because I think, like, what was it? Maybe in the first few months of the show, I did an interview with a woman who called herself the energy alchemist. And then I learned that I was sensitive to energy and things like that, which made a lot of sense because I could explain this feeling, and for whatever reason, I just kept getting more people that fell in that category for a while. And we just kept talking about it, different ideals and it was interesting to me because it was just like, it made sense because now I could explain the sensation I'm having, and things like that, and the show's not even a year old and we're already at like 100 plus episodes now of live episodes recorded. My audio site's at like 50 something right now. Nice. So, things like that, but it's always interesting to meet new people, especially when I saw that too. I was like, polybag, I'm like, what is that? I'm curious, but now it makes more sense because I know I've met a lot of people that do yoga too, because yoga is a big practice that seems to be coming up too. Breath work is coming up more and more and more. I think more people are going the holistic side versus, a lot of the big pharmacy side because we're all now paying attention to a lot of these side effects, which is great because, so that's my thing to everybody's though. It's like, hey, listen, just don't go tunnel vision. Don't go just thinking therapy's it. If it don't work for you, that's it. No, there's so many different things now. The broad spectrum of things you can try out there these days, And I feel like a lot of people live in the, we want it now kind of phase. And it's like, it's not like that, unfortunately. Some of this stuff takes, these people are offering you quick. Oh, I can cure this in 10 seconds. Yeah, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I'm glad they want to sell you this is the quick here, but it's really not, And I think when it comes to emotions too, people don't want to talk about their emotions because they don't want to accept they have emotions, especially for men though, think about it. We don't talk about anything. So Men's Mental Health Month, a lot of people are highlighting a lot of stuff, and things like that too. And I was watching this crazy video the other day of this woman that was mocking it. And I had not seen it until just a few days ago. And I was like, how have I missed this video? Apparently this woman had posted a video saying when it says silence from men's mental health, she's throwing a party in the background, literally her having a party, making all this noise. I think she was trying to be funny. But then, the internet got going after this woman bad. Like she canceled all her social media accounts, everything else. Her family came out and said something too. And I'm just like looking at this in shock. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then all of a sudden, here comes some more videos of these. I'm like, what the hell is going on here, guys? Like, what?
Yeah.
It's like we're making a mockery of mental health in general. It doesn't care, men, women. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the fact that you're telling that these people don't have no right as men. We shouldn't talk about these things. Just like, it's any kind of thing that's in that kind of category. It's crazy to think that that's how we operate as a society now. It's like, you want to tell us all how we should act, but it's like when we start talking about feelings, everybody runs, man. Whoo, they take off, especially suicidal ideation. I think is the one that really is a big trigger point for people. They just go, okay, see ya, checking out, and I think that it's sad because it's like, the numbers are going up. Like, honestly, from what I've been looking at, the numbers just keep going up. And it's just like, guys, when are we going to do something about this? We need to talk more about these things. Just in general, mental health in general, I think, that's the great thing with the show. And then other shows I've seen since I started that jumped in the conversation with me. And I'm just like, yeah, this is what I want, man. I want more people. And, people start mentioning my name, say, oh, well, Pete versus anxiety. Pete versus anxiety just wants the same thing. Wants you all to join this conversation. The more voices, like, get in here, let's go. Yeah. And that's the same thing with podcasting too. A lot of people say, oh, well, somebody has the same idea. You have your own voice, man. Use it. Now's the time to be heard, man. We're in the age of podcasting at this point. Now's the time to get on here and start spreading your voice now. Because if not, don't be in the what if moment of, well, I could have started doing this thing, or I could have. Who cares, man? You never know. I think people are too scared to try things nowadays. They don't take a leap of faith in things. It's like, just go for it. Why not? So what at the end of the day, what do you have to lose? Right. Oh, you spent some time doing this thing. Okay, it didn't work. Okay, it didn't work, but at least you gave it a shot. You tried, I mean, that's my theory, when I think about it.
Yep.
So, but listen, Amy, I have to ask you a question. Okay. So I stole this idea from somebody else. My good friend Gretchen, who runs the shit that goes on in her head. She asked me this question that I'm going to ask you now. If your mental health had a song, what would that song be? Listen, I love the response I get because everybody I think so far has laughed because when I asked you, because it's so interesting because I had a woman, she came on, she said Michael Jackson's Beat It, and I was just like, oh girl, okay, I like that one. Okay, there you go.
Well, I live by humor, so the first songs that come to mind are like Biggie Sean. I think it's Biggie. No, I can't remember. No, it's not Biggie. I can't remember who sings it, but there's a song, I Ain't Effing With You. That rap makes me laugh. The other one that I laugh about is, I think it's Gnarls Barkley does You Think I'm Crazy? That's
that one, yeah.
Singing everybody. Gosh, that's a really good one.
Gretchen was on the show and asked me that question. I was like, all right, well, I told her, it's like, yeah, I stole your idea, by the way. I've been asking people that same question. because it's interesting the responses you get from different people, and it's like music
and
is
those songs are like my crazy, my that end of the continuum,
right?
Feeling a lot of emotion or whatever. Here's what I would say, and I'm going to think about this, and I'm going to message you back when I figure this out.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of trauma in my life. I have 2 siblings that are schizophrenic. One is homeless. One is also learning disabled. Those are kind of ongoing struggles, plus the other, myriad of things that I've been through. And what I know to be true about my mental health is that I always really struggled, kind of didn't know I was struggling. But once I hit the compassion button, it completely opened up my world to another way of being with myself, with my own struggles, with the people I love and their struggles, and then being able to bring this into the therapy room and to build this practice. We are called Rooted Compassion for a reason, is because I feel very rooted in my ability to be compassionate with people in different situations. So off the top of my head, I can't think of a song that incorporates that.
Well, see, now you can use it to ask me that question now, see, because it's interesting to say, because it's interesting the responses you get and things like that too. And I think for the longest time I lied to myself that I had a problem. In fact, I know I did. I mean, that's how this show even started. Funny enough, is that this show started because of my own mental health issues. I decided to start to look into mine, and I was wondering, and I got more curious about just things in general, mental health. For whatever reason, I just had this feeling like I just want to look into it and see what's up. And I started looking, and I see all these shows, mostly doctors and everything else, but where are the people that are having just general conversations? Like I am by no means any professional. I'm just a guy who's curious and bringing the conversation. And little did I know how much this show would take off when it did, because what I did in the beginning, by the end of first or second week, I was already out to the end of the year already with people. And then I added a 3:00 time slot just, for every Mondays, because that was originally what I planned on doing. Then it was more. Now I'm up to 5 days a week. I'm doing a recording every day with people. And it's just like, nice. I can't get enough of the information I get from people. And I try to invite the most interesting people on top of that too, just different things, just to bring it on, just to highlight the things they're doing, like psychedelics and all these other things, holistic healings and, faith-based, it's like, I don't leave any subject untouched at all though. But, I feel like, it's been great though. It's like the evolution of Pete is happening before everybody's eyes. If you watch in the beginning of this show to the end where I'm at now, you'll see a major difference in everything. Like I changed the way I interview people. I don't do the same introductions. The logo, I've upgraded a lot of different things. My logo's changed since the beginning. All these small little ticks and things I've been doing as I go. And it's like, I feel like I can see it and people can see it too. Because now, a lot of people say, oh, well, you sound intelligent. That was my favorite thing though, by the way. People tell me I sound intelligent. I'm like, what does that mean exactly? Like, because I have thoughts, you never wanted to listen to me? Because I always felt like I was never heard, because I was always the middle child, and a lot of people always say that too. And it makes me laugh now, because people are like, well, you sound so intelligent. You don't sound the same. I was like, maybe it's because I was probably like 12 years old at the time, and I didn't have any logic of what I was saying, and the evolution of me has changed. So I'm like, my thought process has changed too. I don't react the same way I do to things, and it's always interesting. Every conversation I've got into so far, I think I've had no problem having a conversation about anything, And when it said neuroscience, I was like, ooh, yes, I like that part. Because me and Betsy Holmberg had an hour-long conversation about negative self-talk, and me and her were just going back and forth. But Betsy had the ability to give you the technical side, but then break it down so you understood exactly what it was. And I understood a lot of it, and me and her had just a blast doing that, and it makes me laugh when you said that. It's like, oh, well, you got to kind of decode what they're saying. I'm like, it's so funny, because in the sense of if his work was big in the 90s, it makes sense, because a lot of times you didn't meet a lot of people then that could really explain it to you. Now a lot of people are moving that way.
And his work wasn't big in the 90s.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
That's when he did his first talk.
Okay.
Published his first paper, and now he's got a ton of books, a ton of research, everything. But yeah, I think people are really just starting to listen to polyvagal theory in the last 8 years, maybe.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
So real quick, Amy, the new book, do you have, what's the progress? Are we close to publishing, or is it still in work? Just asking.
Yeah. So they actually give you a full year to write. So we're in the middle of that year.
Okay.
So it's due December 31st. And from what I understand, it can take up to a year after that to actually get it on shelves. So, but we're hoping to get it in early.
Okay.
So we've been working really hard on it.
Well, you know what that means. So that means that we'll have to invite you back, of course, to come back and talk to us when you can give us the full details on the book and everything else. Because I love talking to people, especially authors in their books, because they're interested. And the only thing I ask a lot of them is just like I'd take a copy signed from you because it'd be great, because I could say, listen, Amy was on my show before you take off with all these, publications that could be coming down the way, and things like that. Awesome. So, but definitely for sure, we'll definitely have to figure out. Keep me posted though about that, because I'll definitely have you come back and we can go deep dive. We dive in there, look at it. You can give us a little more explanation about the book. I'll just make sure I browse over it so I have an idea what it is, and that way I'm preversed. And we'll plan all this stuff in the back scene. But anyways, I'm excited though, because I'm always interested in learning new things. I think what you're doing is groundbreaking. I think that starting to talk to kids is a big thing. Is that I like to tell a lot of people too. I think if we start teaching these guys younger, I think that it's better for them in the future, because a lot of these kids that learn how to do all these things early on, it's beneficial to them later on. And we don't have so many, issues we run into now. And I think that what you guys are doing is phenomenal. And the fact that the parents can pick it up, read the book, and still apply it too, it's even better, because now you're hitting that market too. A lot of these parents that are doing a lot of homeschooling now, hey, listen, they can add that in the curriculum. Let's do a little of this and, and things like that. So I think there's nothing but good things coming down the line. So as we get ready to start wrapping up, Amy, did you want to go ahead and plug wherever everyone can find you? And you have a website. I have all that stuff down below, but you go ahead and give it a shout out. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, so we're at rootedcompassion.com is our website. We're on Instagram as @polyvagal and on Facebook as Rooted Compassion. And then we have links to some YouTube pieces on our website. We also have links to practices to regulate your nervous system on our website. So website is a good jumping off point to learn skills. We can work with people in Kentucky and Ohio. As soon as the counseling compact gets signed, we'll be able to work with people in other states. But for now, that's where we are. But I'm always happy to travel or offer online trainings to folks really anywhere in the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And guys, I'll have everything down below this video for you guys. If you're listening to this at a later date in the audio side, I'll have everything in the audio description for you to find it. And Amy, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate being here. We're definitely going to have her come back when she gets closer to the book coming out and everything. That way we get an idea, or when she gets the book, so she can really fully just dive into it with us and things like that. It was great having you. I apprate you coming and talking to me. This was I had a great time, honestly.
Yeah.
I've learned so much.
Speaking with you. Great.
Thank you so much, guys. And as I always say, I'm Pete versus Anxiety. I'm X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify, all the way down to iHeartRadio. And as I always say, it costs absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete versus Anxiety signing off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's